Policy and master plan involves careful planning, collaboration, and adherence to international best practices. This policy and master plan were laid through rigorous analysis and extensive stakeholder engagement, a review of existing biodiversity-related policies, reveals gaps and opportunities, prompting the development of a comprehensive implementation framework. This framework includes a policy formulation, master plan, and a guiding document, and a monitoring committee. We prepare to plan further because we don't want what they always said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Stakeholder engagement was pivotal throughout this process. 2 key workshops were held in Kuching, followed by an implementation framework workshop in Miri. And the feedback received from this engagement significantly shaped the policy and the plan, which was subsequently validated by stakeholders from various ministries, departments, and agencies. And for this master plan to succeed, we have to internalize it. We have to own it, because ownership by all stakeholders is paramount. Policies lacking clear ownership risk failure. And we want to make sure active participation from the beginning. We foster commitment, encourage buy-in, and strengthen implementation. On this policy, we want to do things today better than yesterday, and we want to do things tomorrow better than today. The formulation process grouped stakeholders into 2 categories, i.e. primary stakeholders and secondary stakeholders, that involve governments, agencies at all levels in ensuring biodiversity integration into Sarawak planning, as well as involving private sector, civil society organization, the public, who will contribute to implementation and sustainability efforts. And I'm proud to be here to emphasize that this policy and master plan are not just a product of private consultants, but instead they are the result of collaborative engagement with ministries, departments, and agencies to make sure alignment with Sarawak government's governance capacities and biodiversity mainstreaming needs. And indeed, this effort is everybody's effort. The Right Honorable Premier, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, before concluding, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to those who made today's preparation possible. First and foremost, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to our esteemed guest of honor, the Right Honorable Dato' Petinggi Premier. Your unwavering support and leadership have been instrumental in shaping these initiatives. Your presence here this evening, sir, reaffirms our collective commitment to sustainable development. I also like to acknowledge the dedication of the organizing committees under the lead of Ms. Tang and the team and all members of the organizing committee. Your meticulous plannings and hard work have ensured the success of this event, and I thank you for your invaluable contribution. Like the saying, details make a difference. As we move forward, let us remember that this policy is not merely a government document or a piece of paper or a book's a collection, but it is a shared vision for our Sarawak future. While challenges may arise, their present, what we have today will tell us what is the real thing happen, because we learn yesterday was history, today is reality, tomorrow is how we manage the environment and sustainability. Let us approach this step with confidence, determination, and a deep sense of responsibility, because whatever we decide today will make impact to whatever happens tomorrow. And we want to make sure future generation of Sarawak, we want to make sure the resilience of Sarawak as biodiversity rich, and together we make me happen. Thank you, and I look forward to working with all of you to realize this vision.
A round of applause for Yang Berbahagia Datuk Haji Abdullah bin Julaihi. Thank you very much, Yang Berbahagia Datuk, for an inspiring, welcoming speech. Thank you, sir. To continue on, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we would like now to invite on stage Mr. Edward Verkic, Resident Representative, United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei Darussalam, to deliver his speech. A round of applause for Mr. Edward Verkic.
Thank you. Good evening. I promise that I will not sing, and I also ask that there are no jokes about Manchester United. Some of my new friends will appreciate that. I'll start. Right Honourable Datuk Patang Tinggi, Premier of Sarawak, Honourable Datuk Amir Professor Sim Kau Huan, Deputy Premier Minister for Public Health, Housing and Local Government, the Honourable Datuk Sri Roland, Minister for Education, Innovation, Talent Development, the Honourable Datuk Ahmad Haji, State Secretary of Sarawak, Honourable Datuk Haji Len Talif, Deputy Minister of Urban Planning, Land Administration Environment, and Yang Beraba Datuk Haji, Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Natural Resources and Urban Development. I thank you all for your invitation tonight, and it is a pleasure and a privilege to be here. In particular today, because today marks Earth Day. It's the 55th Earth Day. In doing so, I'll start by acknowledging Sarawak's leadership, Premier, your vision and UNDP's partnership with government and the people of Sarawak, all of whom represent a rich tapestry of culture, history and wisdom. I take this opportunity to specifically acknowledge the Ministry of Natural Resources and Urban Development of Sarawak, or MUDUR. This initiative, led by government, amplifies the 55th anniversary of Earth Day. It underscores the Honourable Premier's vision of a new economy, one that achieves sustainability by striking a balance between biodiversity conservation, prosperity, and as a leader of renewable and cleaner sources of energy. The theme of tonight's ceremony, Vision with Action for Biodiversity, is a testament to Sarawak's commitment to transforming words into actions. I was informed that the master plan itself has been printed on sustainably certified paper, further underscoring Sarawak's dedication to sustainability. As a strategic partner, UNDP is proud to walk this journey shoulder to shoulder with Sarawak. UNDP is steadfast in our commitment to collaborate for a sustainable future. Our partnership is built on values, a vision where green growth or greener growth and conservation are compatible with economic growth and increased and more inclusive prosperity. Over the past century, our planet has focused or faced an unprecedented decline in natural resource and ecological stability. Driven by human activities such as deforestation, overfishing and pollution, these challenges are rooted in unsustainable production and consumption practices. At its core, the crisis reflects an underestimation of nature's value in our global systems and our daily lives. UNDP is not alone in sounding the alarm on biodiversity loss and climate change. We, UNDP, estimate that of the approximate 8 million species that we know of today in the world, 1 million are currently under the threat of extinction. And we should not forget that Sarawak is part of one of 17 mega-diverse biology hotspots in the world. Much of this is due to human activities and the impacts of climate change. This decline is unprecedented in human history. We are now witnessing what many have come to accept is the sixth great extinction. It's not without good reason that the United Nations has declared this decade the decade of ecosystem restoration. It represents a rallying cry to stem biodiversity loss, reverse climate change, and enhance food security. Habitat destruction, overexploitation of natural resources, pollution, climate change, and invasive species have led to substantial alterations in terrestrial and marine ecosystems. Today, over 75% of the Earth's land surface and 66% of its marine environment have been significantly changed by human actions. The implications for economic stability and human well-being are profound. UNDP estimates that the value of ecosystem services, that is the value of clean water, air and land, is worth approximately $44 trillion to the global economy. That's half of the global economy. I just want you to reflect on that. Malaysia's total GDP is 400 billion. Half of that, it can be increased by simply focusing or providing for clean water, air, and land. Our global consumption patterns are unsustainable, and this disparity is very stark, particularly when it comes to high-income, highly developed countries that are the worst offenders. To give you an example, on average in the OECD, high-income countries, their consumption rates are 7 times more than low-income countries. This is a very important point to make as Sarawak projects forward for its future model of development. As Malaysia pursues high-income status, understanding this is critical to ensure that your resources are well and sustainably managed. And I think it's fair to say that Sarawak is leading Malaysia on many aspects of this. Sarawak's post-COVID-19 development strategy serves as an exemplary model anchored on 3 pillars: economic prosperity, an inclusive society, and environmental sustainability. Sarawak's foresight demonstrates that economic growth does not automatically necessitate increased consumption. All of this seems daunting. And when I talk to my 2 sons, they say, "Dad, what have you guys done? What have you done for us? What have you left us with?" And I think this is something we all need to register, no matter what our ages are. The transition from nature negative to nature positive, we must conserve and restore more of the planet's land, water, and oceans. We must adopt regenerative agricultural practices, embrace sustainable consumption and sustainable consumption patterns. We must assign the true economic value of nature-based solutions and conservation. Estimates vary on what this really means, but it requires that we change the way we think about our natural resources, from generating income to becoming an asset class that global investors will choose to invest in. There's a few examples. If I just think about the ocean resource of which Sarawak is blessed, we know globally at the moment for every $1 that is made in a sustainable ocean investment, whether that be fisheries or productive harvesting that's sustainable, we're seeing an approximate return of $5. So for every $1 invested in sustainable practice, we're seeing a $5 return. In places like Papua New Guinea, where I've just been for the last decade of my life, many similarities to Malaysia in terms of its biodiversity, we're seeing up to a $20 return for every $1 invested, because this leads into carbon credits, environmental credits, etc. Tonight's launch of Sarawak's biodiversity policy and master plan encapsulates these nature-positive actions and measures and provides us with some guiding principles. Protecting and restoring Sarawak's rich biodiversity is crucial for halting nature loss, safeguarding carbon sinks and preventing ecosystem collapse, upon which every Sarawakian life depends. And I think Sarawak is a beautiful example of the correlation between life, livelihood, and your natural environment. It really is an extraordinary global example. This evening highlights Sarawak's leadership in pursuing all 3 objectives of the Convention on Biological Diversity. UNDP is proud to have assisted Sarawak in achieving impressive results aligned with the CBD, and certainly working with you on the master plan under government's leadership. I'm proud to say that UNDP has supported government with, for example, the successful access and benefit sharing program, which has led to the creation of a Litsira product. This initiative not only assists biodiversity conservation, but also empowers local communities. It provides economic opportunities and promotes traditional knowledge. We should never forget that ultimately, whatever we do, it really is about what it means on the ground for everyday people. Sarawak's commitment to biodiversity conservation is well recognised in UNDP, the United Nations, and globally. UNDP remains steadfast in partnering on these endeavours, and you have my commitment tonight to ensure that we continue to work with you on protecting your iconic species, your iconic flora and fauna. Tonight, the master plan we're launching aligns seamlessly with the Kuching-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the National Policy on Biodiversity. This further positions Sarawak to achieve balanced, sustainable and greener economic growth. The framework provides a roadmap for integrating biodiversity considerations into policies and ensures that development does not come at the expense of ecological integrity. Simply, it ensures that Sarawak continues to lead from the front. UNDP is committed to exploring innovative and inclusive solutions that address development challenges with you. Our presence, or the presence of our staff in Kuching, facilitated through the partnership with Natural Resources and Honourable Permanent Secretary, enables us to respond effectively to the development needs of Sarawak while applying a local lens. Today's achievement exemplifies our successful strategic partnership, and we look forward to similar successes in the two other initiatives on which UNDP and government is partnering, namely the Sarawak Urban Development Policy and the Blue Economy Policy. Your partnership with UNDP is delivering impressive returns on involves. I'm proud to say that for every $1 that government has invested in UNDP, we've mobilised $3 additional, and we do believe that we can increase that further. With UNDP, you have over 60 years of experience, and this year is our 60th anniversary in Malaysia, from which to leverage lessons and best practice. UNDP offers a global repository of expertise and a depth of experience that's unprecedented. We are the largest part of the UN development system. Your master plan will deepen understanding of biodiversity's connection and decisions, and tonight I will send it to all of my fellow ambassadors in the ASEAN group in the United Nations. As the Malay proverb suggests, "Sik kanal maka sik cinta." We stand with you as you learn, and we follow you as you lead while you foster a culture of conservation and biodiversity protection. It's under your visionary leadership, Honourable Premier Datuk Patinggi Abang, I'm confident that no hurdle is insurmountable. Your leadership has been instrumental in driving forward policies that balance economic growth with environmental stewardship. I know this is not easy. If it was easy, we wouldn't be here tonight. But I'm sure that the precedent that we are setting is one that the rest of not only Malaysia will follow, not only ASEAN, not only the Asia Pacific, but the world. UNDP reaffirms its commitment to collaborate with you in delivering future results under your leadership. I wish you all the very best and look forward to the success of the Biodiversity Policy and Master Plan. Together we can create a legacy of sustainability that future generations will be proud of. Thank you and terima kasih.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to Mr. Edward Verkic, the representative for UNDP Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei Darussalam. Thank you also for the Malaysian proverb, "Sik kenal maka tak cinta." Baiklah tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, ladies and gentlemen, before we go on our next program, may we first give way to Imperial Hotel to serve you dinner. Bon appetit, selamat menjamu selera. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope that you are enjoying this evening and the delicious food served by Imperial Hotel. It is now with great pleasure to present to you a special video montage of the Sarawak Biodiversity Policy Statement and the Sarawak Biodiversity Master Plan. Dipersilakan. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. As you can see from the video, it was a long journey to produce this policy statement and master plan. It is the hard work of all the stakeholders involved, led by the collaboration of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Urban Development and the United Nations Development Programme. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them another big round of applause. The moment we all have been waiting for, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to kindly ask Yang Berbahagia, Dato' Haji Abdullah bin Zulaihi, to invite the Right Honourable Premier of Sarawak for the official speech. Let's give him a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good evening. Salam sejahtera. Salam Sarawak maju dan makmur. Yang berhormat saudara Timbalan Premier Dato' Amar Dato' Sim, yang berhormat rakan-rakan menteri Dato' Sri Olan Sagah dan Dato' Len Timbalan Menteri, yang berbahagia Dato' Abdullah Julaidi, lupa saya, yang berhormat Setiausaha Kerajaan Sarawak Dato' Amar Abu Bakar, Yang berbahagia Datuk Abdullah Julahi, seterusnya ketua-ketua jabatan, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang saya hormati sekalian. Pertama kali saya mengucap terima kasih kepada pihak penganjur kerana menjemput saya pada malam ini dan seterusnya memberi saya penghormatan untuk melancarkan Vision and Action Plan for Biodiversity. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Ministry and Dato' Abdullah Julahi and his team in partnership with UNDP for their collaboration and eventually for producing this policy statement, which is very important in our effort to develop Sarawak income economy, though we have been recognized as high income, but we are still working 30. With that, I would like to say thank you and congratulations to all the parties concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, I have here a prepared text, but after listening to Dato' Abdullah and Mr. Edward, let me share with you what I have in mind in terms of managing our biodiversity and also the policies that the government is implementing as far as the macroeconomic policies of Sarawak. You know very well that under post-COVID-19 development strategy, we have the 3 pillars, which is economic prosperity, meaning we want to increase income of our people, at the same time to reach a certain figure, or not only the needs of our people and the country, but also the need to balance our economic growth and what we have. And that leads to the 3rd pillar, which is the environmental sustainability. In other words, our economic policy towards the 2030 started about after the COVID, 2022, is a policy that balance our PCDS, except the policy that we are launching tonight is more micro in terms of how to balance our ecosystem and the need of our economic development. This is why I would like to express our appreciation to UNDP, because your main policy on ESG is part and parcel of our macro approach to develop our state towards 2030. I must share with you that this afternoon, I had a delegation from the European Parliamentary Association together with their ambassadors. And they have selected Sarawak as part of their visit to Malaysia. And they want to know our policy on climate issues, our policy on sustainability, and also our policy on renewable energy. I shared with them that we have to invest and take risks when you talk about balancing environment as well as your effort toward prosperity. Because As you know, the issues of climate change is basically emission of carbon that have produced an imbalance environment throughout the world because too much carbon emission, and you have also the issues of gas house emission. And they were impressed that we have a law already, the reduction of greenhouse emission. In other words, we collect data, and from that data, we formulate policies to make sure that we factor in the issues of environment as part of our policy implementation. Against that background, I share with them that developed countries must also commit themselves in terms of financial strength to contribute and invest in new energy. And Sarawak took the risk to implement our hydrogen policy. And hydrogen, though it has been proven the cleanest energy, but it is costly. Somebody has to pay the costs. And that has to be done through technology improvement, where you try to bring down the cost of producing 1 kilogram of hydrogen. And it is a long journey. But if the developed countries having the financial resource contribute their part, then there is a possibility that the research being taken by scientists with the capital outlay in terms of research, perhaps we can reduce the cost of producing 1 kilo of hydrogen. With the use of hydrogen, and the carbon emission will be mitigated, and you are able to have alternative energy. And with that, we can assist in the issues of conservation of environment. Because biodiversity basically life sciences. Life sciences, there must be element of coexistence between one another. The animals or wildlife depends on the trees. You can see the butterfly just now. It depends on the flowers. At the same time, the trees also depend on water. And you have to retain water. I mean, this is a cycle, natural cycle. And against that natural cycle, our policy must be formulated in order to continue this cycle. Otherwise, one component not there or one element not there, the other element will be dying. And for that to be protected, we have to have a very sound and profound policy that will balance the two. So in other words, what we are launching tonight is somebody has to act. Action. Otherwise the plan is just on the table. Nobody will implement whatever plan you have if you don't have the commitment and willing to take the risk. Somebody has to do it. And the delegation this afternoon acknowledged what we have done. Just an example, if you want to protect mangrove, yesterday I attended a meeting chaired by Prime Minister on climate change. Somebody was talking about mangrove. Then I shared my view. Mangrove, yes, scientifically, they can store huge carbon. But then at the same time, maybe small farmers, small holders, his land is a mangrove land. he has to earn a living, and he has to make use of the land that he has, it happens to be mangrove. And we have to teach them to find an alternative earning on mangrove. That's where carbon credit is important. The international community must have an international protocol on how to pay. Somebody has to pay for the carbon that is being retained in mangrove. That's where kita punya carbon trading comes in. And the international community hasn't got the right protocol on how to standardize, evaluate the value of carbon in mangrove. That one we leave to the scientists. But there must be a formula where we can retain carbon in mangrove area. So people living in mangrove area have something to earn. Otherwise, they have to continue living. There's no coexistence between mangrove and the life of people who are, depending on their land, happen to be mangrove area. So there's a solution. There must be a solution on that. Second is our plan, policy plan that we launched tonight. We factor in all this development on sensitive area. The government, Sarawak government, has decided that if there is a deep pit, we want to build a road, meaning we have to build elevated road. Elevated road means extra money compared with a normal road. So there is expand in order to us to preserve the environment that we have. And this has been part of our policy, and we are doing the first one in Kemunyang area in Cebu using elevated road. And the minister in charge of infrastructure, Dato' Ahmad Douglas, we have decided that if we go building infrastructure which is necessary on pit soil, we use elevated road. But we have to find money. When you talk to people who does the budget, they may say, hey, very expensive. You cannot do that. This is the budget we can allocate to you. But luckily, Sarawak ada sikit duit lah. We bear the extra cost because of our love to protect the environment of Sarawak. In other words, the ESG is part of the ingredient in our effort to preserve our environment. Just now I was given the briefing on thematic sector. This one I left to the technical committee to look into this thematic sector across the board. So that is part of the process for us to preserve our environment and life sciences. Finally, I would like to share with you that our biodiversity ordinance, we will amend our Sarawak biodiversity ordinance where you do research on our biodiversity. There could be commercial value on our biodiversity, and perhaps that material can be commercialized, including ways to multiply the number, extra number, and you can get revenue from that. Under the present ordinance, SBC is not allowed to do this, and I have decided that we amend the SBC ordinance to allow research and commercialization of research in order we can share the outcome with the world. For instance, our algae. Algae is part of our research. Now, if that algae produce biofuel, and that biofuel becomes SAF, and SBC cannot go into any joint commercial collaboration with an authorized authority who knows it, then SBC rugi lah. But if you have that research, because algae is part and parcel of biodiversity, and if that can give revenue producing biofuel, then we also contribute to the supply of biofuel, which is green in nature, to our aviation industry. That will lessen the emission of carbon from our planes. And this is part of, the whole ecosystem. And that is why we are amending our SBC, Sarawak Biodiversity Ordinance, to allow research and commercialization of our research for the benefit of mankind, because it is nature-based. Once you have nature-based product, surely you really look after the material that is used to produce that product. This is under SGD, I think 12 here, SDG, responsible consumption and production. And that is what we call responsible consumption and production through this collaboration. And the other one is, I found out, I think 2 months ago, that I think Dato' Len knows about this. There's a tree that can grow fast, indigenous tree called kalapayang. And then this tree, in terms of texture, has quality perhaps better than acacia. So in other words, we have the land, we increase number of trees, and then if you were to cut it, it is circular in nature. In other words, you grow, you cut, you grow, you cut. And that will, produce biomass. And once you have the biomass, now there is what we call hybrid power production using biomass, as well as other components, particularly gas or hydrogen. I was told hydrogen you mix with carbon, you produce synthetic gas. And these are all the formula that we have to look into in terms of our policy decision. And that, I think, part of the ways for us to meet the qualification under ESG. These are all research, and I hope Sarawak Biodiversity Plan and action encompass all these components in order for us to preserve our environment based on the 3 pillars, that is economic prosperity, inclusivity, and our environmental sustainability. Once you get the right pillar, and then Sarawak can be sustainable. We still can eat and having clean air With that, once again, thank you very much. And I wish you all the best. And I take this opportunity again to thank UNDP for your collaboration and input. And I hope that the future is sustainable for our future generation. Since we are in Shawwal, I take this opportunity also to wish you Selamat Hari Raya Aidilfitri. I must tell you just now with State Secretary, this is the first time I attend a function without using baju Melayu. With that, thank you very much. I wish you all the best again.
Thank you very much, and we kindly invite the Right Honourable Premier to remain on stage for the official gimmick, and we would like to also invite our distinguished guests seated on the main table to accompany the Right Honourable Premier to the stage for the official launch gimmick. We would like now to invite the Right Honourable Premier of Sarawak and our distinguished VIP guests to head to the gimmick podium. Dipersilakan. This symbolic representation of removal and control of excessive extraction and harvesting, moving forward with sustainable use of biodiversity. We now present the scissors to the Right Honourable Premier of Sarawak. This is linked to our theme this evening, Vision with Action for Biodiversity. In the count of 3, we will ask the Right Honourable Premier to cut the net. In 1, 2, 3. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. As we watch the video, each different ecosystem is important and has its functions and services to all life. Among the ecosystem services are provisioning, such as food, water for human life. The material or energy outputs from an ecosystem. Regulating, benefits through pollination, regulating the climate for a better living condition. Supporting, services that maintain fundamental ecosystem processes such as water regulation, nutrient cycling, and so forth. Cultural, which is very significant to Sarawak, where our culture is closely tied to biodiversity. As you can see from the launching gimmick, you can see the video is a representation of the major ecosystem in Sarawak. The marine ecosystem, the coastal ecosystem, and the terrestrial ecosystem. And ladies and gentlemen, we now present the master plan. The Biodiversity Master Plan is a strategic implementation framework formulated to mainstream biodiversity consideration into Sarawak's development agenda. This master plan has identified 6 thematic areas where mainstream is paramount. Now we would like to invite Yang Berbahagia, Dr. Haji Abdullah bin Julaihi, to present the Vision with Action for Biodiversity Policy and Plan to the Right Honourable Premier of Sarawak. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause, please. Congratulations. Thank you, Yang Berbahagia Dato'. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like now to proceed with the appointment of the Ambassador for Biodiversity Sarawak, which is the first in Malaysia. Let's give a big round of applause for Elena Murang. By this appointment, the information on biodiversity is shared and coordinated between all sectors, especially the importance of biodiversity conservation, protection and management. It showcases Sarawak's commitment in ensuring the biodiversity, protection and sustainable use of natural resources. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite the Right Honourable Premier of Sarawak to present the sash to Elena Murang. Ladies and gentlemen, the appointment of Biodiversity Ambassador Elena Murang. Congratulations to Elena Murang, and now we shall proceed with the memento presentation. We would like first to invite Mr. Edward Verkic to present.